What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video I'm very excited to share a topic with you that I've wanted to talk about for a long time, called learning by listening. And I think this is especially important as composers and arrangers, increasingly more so as we work on our own music and music for other people, is just to be an all-in-one package, being able to compose, but also being able to arrange, orchestrate, mix, produce, master, all those different phases. It's really important to be a well-rounded musician, especially in today's modern landscape, being online and all of that. Having the more skills means that we can do a better job in general and, wear different hats to do as much as possible. So anyway, the topic of orchestration and arrangement is a vast one, and we could definitely talk a lot about this. However, I wanted to share my personal approach with you of how I personally learned orchestration and arranging. And because I've also gotten this question quite a lot over the years, it's how do you know what to listen for? How do you know, what does what? What drives the emotion? What makes something feel a certain way or sound a certain way? And that can easily be answered by one word, and that is listening. So nothing will really benefit you better than using your ears and listening critically to a piece of music and trying to break down what the individual elements are doing. So this is in contrast with passive listening, where you're listening for enjoyment, or you're just listening, for the sake of listening to new music, right? Rather, we're listening in a way that we're trying to pick out specific elements that we can absorb internally and use in turn in our own music, right? So this is really, really important. And this is the exact way that I've been doing it for the longest time. I don't usually write stuff down. I just basically listen to music over and over, especially the pieces and arrangements I enjoy the most. And then I basically absorb the different influences that I'm hearing in the track. And when I output, like when I write my own music, then I basically take those influences that have been ingrained inside and output that into my music. So it does benefit you, of course, to be classically trained in some way, maybe in harmony or on the piano, or if you've learned counterpoint or things like that, then you can put words to those devices a little more clearly. But listening is your best friend here. And if you have a little bit of background, then this can make the process a lot easier. So I'm just going to use Josh Groban's Pure Imagination cover as an example here, because this is from his album Stages, which is basically an album of musical theater style covers, and he hired some really talented orchestrators to arrange the tracks on this record. And this is actually the first track on the album. So I want to go through here and show you how, if I were to actually write down and take notes of the different orchestration elements that I'm hearing, what I would do in that case. So let's start here. We don't have to be totally specific with the timestamps unless you're trying to recreate this piece from scratch. But what I'm thinking is we'll have a listen through, and if something stands out to me, I'm going to write down what instrument I think that is, and then also what emotional effect it's having on the overall piece of music, right? Because if it's not serving a specific purpose, then it shouldn't be there. You should only put in elements that enhance the overall thing, the overall production, the overall arrangement. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize, is that less is more, So of course you need a foundational element like strings as the background texture, for example, if it's musical theater. But then when you have other instruments in there as well, like brass, maybe some percussion elements, those are there for a specific reason and not just to be there for the sake of being there, So anyway, let's dive in and let's take some notes. And maybe you could do this at the same time and compare with mine and see if we're kind of matching up here. But anyway, let's jump in.
Come with me.
Okay, so overall, I'm basically noticing a few things here. So overall, the strings are setting a very warm and a cozy tone from the start, right? In addition to that, we have this cello ensemble unison line in the middle register. So if you have a listen. Right? It feels like it's going up and up. So it's basically signifying like a journey is beginning. And then there's those little percussion tinkles at the very beginning, which makes us feel magical. It's almost like a Disney type of thing, right? The other thing is when the lower brass comes in, it's probably French horns because those have a very warm sound. We feel comfortable, warm, and cozy. So I love using the brass in this manner to create warm beds of sound, you know, and it makes us feel really comfortable and just laid back, and it's like we're having a cup of hot chocolate and all of that. So it's really beautiful.
Come with me, and you'll be.
So ignoring his voice for a second, which is of course really nice, but in between vocals, harp tinkles response, right? So if you have a listen,
And you'll be.
you hear it there.
In a world of pure imagination. Take a look and you'll see into you.
Stereo width of all instruments envelops the listener. So strings are playing maybe some sort of flautando or some sort of harmonics maybe for a wispy sound.
Your imagination.
There's the percussion elements again. Now, what comes next?
Begin with a spin, traveling in a world of my creation. What we'll see.
So, second, or I should say repetition of theme. Warm brass comes in to support strings in, or I could say doubled in unison, or octaves for thickness and warmth.
You will defy explanation.
And also, one thing you should notice, especially in this type of music, is that anytime the instruments are responding to the vocalist, they're playing in a very melodic way. And this is something I try to think about every single piece I'm writing, is that when I'm singing my lead melody, right? That's obviously the center of attention. However, what keeps an arrangement interesting? It's the stuff that happens in between that or behind it, right? And that can usually be through strings, woodwinds, or brass. Usually the percussion elements are usually keeping the beat, if you will. So the counter melodies or the call and response methods are very, very important in this type of music because it really feels like we're having a conversation with the other instruments, right? So in this case, we really have that happening throughout so far. So he's still singing. Aha, so when he sings, right? And then they soar in together as he sings the word explanation. And then the other instruments kind of soar in with him and back him with that chord. This really beautiful F major 7 chord. And so this is basically thinking in terms of the instrumentalists themselves. We're thinking, what would the performers like to enjoy? And this is something that was reinforced by Chris Walden, a wonderful arranger in LA. In one of his masterclasses, he basically mentions how when we're writing for the different instruments of the orchestra, we want to make it fun for them to play. And so this is why I love writing musical theater style music and Disney music, is because the lines can be so flowing and they can be so lush, and the counter melodies and the harmonic stuff, they can all interact in such a beautiful way, right? So anyway, you hear the brass and strings and octaves.
If you want to view paradise, simply look around and view view it.
That chord was beautiful. Let's have a listen.
If you want to view paradise, simply look around and view it.
Okay.
Simply look around and view it.
Now, when he says look around and view it, think about that imagery. When you look around and view something new, then it's almost like you're hearing a new color come in as well. So the orchestra has to match what's happening in the lyrics. When he says look around and view it, he's saying like look at something new, right?
Around and view it.
And we definitely hear some new sounds in there. I definitely hear some sort of flute, some woodwind there to enhance and lighten up the chord in a way there, right? So for lightness and more color, woodwinds come in for added texture. Thick chord, on the thick chord, right? So maybe flute, clarinet, oboe. One of those kind of instruments that really just thickens up the whole thing. And then, by the way, after we're done all of this, then you can jump into your sample libraries and actually test different instruments out and see what kind of fits together. And that's the beauty of samples, is you don't have to hire a real orchestra to do this.
Anything you want to do it, want to change the world, there's nothing to it. There's nothing to it.
So there, sometimes instruments double vocalist melody for enhanced effect, right? Or a more intense effect, right? With other instruments in harmony underneath for color. So we're not going into what the exact chords are, but you get the idea. Like, I'm kind of trying to say what the instruments are doing and how they're affecting the overall emotion of the piece. Again, it adds a lot of warmth there.
There is no life I know to compare with pure imagination. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be. If you want to see magic land.
Let's hear the instrumental one more time. So you hear how the melody is being played by those higher violins, right? And then the woodwinds, you hear kind of do-do-do-do, they kind of respond to the string melody. So there's always a call and response in this arrangement. And so depending on how complex the actual arrangement is, you want to be taking these type of notes, either mental or writing them down on a piece of paper.
If you want to see magic land, close your eyes and you will see one. Want to be a dream.
Now, what I mean by this, when I say as the vocalist comes back and the instruments make way, have a listen to this. First of all, they go really quiet, so they let him seep back in.
If you want to see magic.
Hear the high violins, do 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 do. Whereas the rest of the arrangement is happening with the piano in the middle register and maybe some low strings there in the low as well. But there's nothing really in the mids to compete with his voice. And this is a sign of good arranging, is knowing where the vocalist's range is going to sit or where their voice is going to sit and staying out of their way, you know?
Close your eyes and you will see one. Want to be a dreamer, be one. Anytime you please, and please save me one.
much more active as well, especially in the high violins for adventurous and excited feeling.
There is no place to go to compare with your imagination. So go there to be free if you truly wish to be. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be.
Great. So let's have that last bit again. Low strings, high violins create sustained texture, and piano arpeggiates. Final chord. So if you really paid attention to every single element that you're hearing, of course it's kind of impossible to maybe say exactly what each instrument is in the arrangement, but we can get close enough, right? And we can, as long as we have some idea of what each of the instrument families sounds like, we can say this family is doing this is doing this is doing this, right? But you'll notice that every single instrument family and every instrument has a purpose, and they're not just there to make it just to be there, right? They always serve a certain purpose. So the low strings and their low brass tend to do the best when they are supporting the overall chords by making it nice and warm and thick. The high strings tend to soar in the counter melodies and really respond to what Josh Groban's singing, right? So in the parts where he's breathing and taking a little bit more time, they can really interject and just keep the arrangement going and flowing forward. So that, again, that's something I really try to think about when I'm doing my arrangements for myself and for other people, is how can each instrument serve a certain purpose that is necessary, right? Because if the instrument I'm adding isn't really doing anything, then there's no really any point in having it there. So that, I think that's really important. And this is basically the process I would take if I was to write all the notes down. But what I typically do is I listen to arrangements like this. I just put it on repeat for maybe 3, 4, or 5 times, and I just try to absorb as much as possible. And that's how I get to the point where if I'm singing this song, like maybe Over the Rainbow, somewhere over the rainbow, right? If I'm singing that melody, if I'm crescendoing on the word where, somewhere, then maybe I want the instruments to support that crescendo. So maybe I start with the strings a little bit quieter, somewhere. So that means like the violin soared, the cello dropped down to the B minor, and then maybe the woodwinds can also rise up to that as well to meet it for additional color. Always think of the orchestra as colors, and deciding which ones to put in for desired emotional effects and things like that. So it's a lot of fun being an arranger, being an orchestrator, because you really are the god for that moment. It's like you get to determine what the final listener hears in terms of all the instruments, and there really is no greater feeling in having that your arrangement being performed either by virtual instruments or a real orchestra, which I haven't had the opportunity to do yet. But hey, that's part of the dream in the future. Anyway, I hope this little talk about learning by listening, critical listening, has given you a little bit of an insight into my process. And just to recap, I don't really do this physical writing out stuff at all. I do it by listening and closing my eyes and sitting back and just absorbing as much as possible. However, you might find that as a visual learner or as someone who learns best by writing stuff down, this method might really help you. And it doesn't really matter what musical genre you're listening to. It could be anything, right? So this is just the style that I enjoy the most. So I pay attention to those instruments in and see what they're doing in this context. But for you, it could be absolutely anything. And that's the beauty of it. As an arranger, we can really enjoy a variety of genres and, learn the instrument's limits, what they can do and what they cannot do. So anyway, thank you so very much for watching. I hope this helped you. And yeah, let me know if you kind of do this. Like, how do you personally learn arranging, orchestration? How do you improve? Do you study scores? Do you listen to music? What's your preferred method of learning this type of stuff? And if you haven't already checked out my 10 steps to a clear orchestral sound, this is actually the very first guide I put together, and it's one of my favorites because these are really 10 steps that I follow at all times to really make sure that every single arrangement I write is clear, full, rich, and every instrument serves a purpose. And if someone just came up to me and asked me, what are like key things that you would tell an aspiring arranger to look out for when arranging a mock-up or orchestrating something, these are the 10 things I would share with you. So it's an absolutely free guide. It's the first link in the description box below. You can download it as a guide for your next piece if you're interested. But I'm really excited about that one. I think it'll really help you. So if you found this video valuable, then I'm sure you'll like the guide as well. So anyway, thank you so very much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.